Welcome back to the NattyShedLife podcast. In this episode, it is all about Calum. Calum joined Gillies Mackay in 2017 and he is our on-site manager and director of CSR who does the groundworks and landscaping for some of our Gillies Mackay customers. Calum has been setting the bar ever since he was 16 when he first joined Gillies Mackay, and he's got an extraordinary story. So let's get into it. Calum.
Aye. Take us back.
To way back.
Right at the start.
Yeah, right at the start.
Right at the start. Well, Calum joined us in 2017. And at the time, Calum was still 16. And he came to us for this sort of, we're trying to find a woodcutter to help Dad not have to do so much on the saw and maybe train them up to become like an actual woodcutter scenario, which plays out quite a lot in Gillies Mackay history. Calum came on board for that job specifically. I think there was something that he told me about later on that it was like, that wasn't actually what he was wanting to do. Like, it wasn't like joinery was a career that he was going for. He was seeing himself more as like a sparky, like he would like to go and do an apprenticeship and become an electrician. However, obviously the job offer came up and so he went for it. And that's where the story of Calum began. And I didn't really have much involvement with him at that time. 2017 was a very turbulent time for myself. So I wasn't really that focused. It was more to do with workshop. And at that time, Dad was very much in charge of workshop. He was the woodcutter, but he was also the workshop manager. He assigned everybody's jobs. That was his role. So I didn't really have to have too much involvement there, not anywhere near as what I do now. So with that being said, Dad took Calum under his wing, trained him in everything that he needed to know in terms of grading timber, what needed to happen in terms of cutting the buildings, creating cutting lists, knowing how to best use the wood, all the different elements to the wood cutting role. And in that time, like I do remember speaking to Dad, like, you know, how's he getting on or whatever, or an opportunity where Dad would be able to brag about Calum. That was always a good thing, to when Dad does it sort of like unprompted to praise someone. Because I think from his generation down into our generation, like getting that approval and getting that praise was quite rare. So when he did brag about Calum, it was very sweet. There's one thing that he used to tell me was about at the end of Calum's shift, he would shake Dad's hand and say thank you, as if like that was normal for a 16-year-old to do or anyone to do in their job. And it's just like a mark of gratitude and respect from a very, very young age. And I'm just like, that has to come from his parents. Presumably, because I can't, you just don't hear of it or see of that sort of mannerism in today's age. So I always thought that was really sweet, and a signifier, that he was very appreciative of the opportunity. So yeah, really nice start to Calum's career. Wood cutting was where he entered the company. It's certainly not where he is today. If you ask him to go on the saw today, you'd get a 4-letter response. And so I think understanding what was needed for that role was definitely in Calum. It's not that he wouldn't have been able to, but his aspirations were far more varied. So there was variety that he was seeking, and he knew that there was so much more to learn than just one role within the company. And then that's where he came to me and asked if he would be able to do the modern apprenticeship. And at the time, I was a little bit reluctant because I hate CITB with a passion. And they had the monopoly of modern apprenticeships at that time. And a few of our staff had been through them in the past, and the total fuckery around their complete incompetence and the fact that they're so disorganised when it comes to the training programme for this apprenticeship. It's over 4 years. Doesn't take into consideration that the employers of these apprenticeships are typically small businesses who rely heavily on these persons going through this. And so in order for me to sort of say yes to this idea, I really had to look beyond myself and like my personal want or selfishness, and say, you know, this boy really wants to do this and he wants to learn, and he is already showing everything of the capability in it. So like there's not a doubt that I didn't, you know, think that Calum was capable of it. So it is an investment in your staff to do this. And I feel like the alternative would be to stand in his way and say no, or postpone it, or say maybe later. But to say no, let's give this a shot. I believe in you, and I think that you can do this, and we'll support you, was the right decision, 100%, because he's still here today. So I think after that point, it was clear that his direction had to change. Like, he couldn't just be a trainee woodcutter. He needed multiple different areas of expertise. So he got to try out all the different roles. And within a very short space of time, things started to really change within the business. We had a sort of like disaster with our office manager. She embezzled thousands of pounds out of the company. And at that time also, my brother Dominic, who had been leading the on-site assembly team, had decided that he'd had enough. And in hindsight, looking back at the experiences that Dom had to put up with in his role in his department, I fully understand, and I am sorry that he was up against it like that for so long without being seen or heard. And I wish that there was a way that he could see how it is today, because a lot of how I've developed the delivery team with Calum has come off the back of the experiences that Dom had to endure. So so Calum had to really step into the delivery aspect, and he'd already had a taste of it, and it was very much a calling, shall we say. In order for you to go out on site, you have to really fucking love going out on site, because it's a hard job. It is fucking brutal. Like, weather and all, the unforeseens, the not knowing what's happening next, can really throw people, and it's not a comfortable place to be if you prefer the sort of like certainty of knowing everything and having everything in a controlled environment. So when that came about, and the time that we were in, what happened was that Calum spent most of his time out on site with Grant, the founding director. Now, Grant is a genius. I don't know if there's any other way to explain the level of intelligence that comes with that man. He is the brains behind every structural specification that we have at Gillies Mackay. He works incredibly hard to make sure that our buildings are fit to stand the test of time and match their guarantee. He also knows so much about buildings, of our statutes, so like what we make, based on his own experiences and working out in Canada from a young age. So lumberjacking, and then coming back here and setting this up with Dad. So the knowledge base that you get from Grant is wild. And Calum just has this ability to absorb information at a rapid pace and understand it, and then implement it quickly. And he does so where he gets to the point where he's learned something and then he adapts it as well. So he adapts it to either be better or easier, which is very, very similar to Grant. Grant's always redesigning. So he spends his time out on site with Grant, And that's where his role really segments into the company, is that Calum is deliveries. And that's where his proper journey began.
How many years was that across from when he first started to like being like on site?
Yeah, it's fucking wild actually. So like 2017, he gets here, starts to be a woodcar, decides he wants to be an apprentice, goes into all the different roles within the company. Dominic leaves in 2018. Him and Grant are on site from 2019 to right up till the end of COVID, really. And they had other people, like we'd hired a few different folk in between those times. We tried to find a suitable delivery team. It was getting really difficult. I mean, I cannot express the mindset and the willingness that needs to come from a person to want to go out on site every fucking day and put these buildings up. Like, it's not an easy job. So to find the right match for that, the right fit for that, is really quite complex. I feel now that we're in a position with the teams that we have now, where everybody's performing at a level that's outstanding, that we've got a solid delivery team now. But it's taken a hard graft to get there. Mm-hmm. And I think, so that's like, that brings you up to sort of like end of 2019, 2020. So like 3 fucking years.
3 years, aye.
3
That's
fucking years.
A lot in 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Aye.
It's rapid, the pace in which they learn.
It's the pace in which they learn, and the pace that the business was going at that time as well, like having to constantly react to the changes that were happening around you. That is like you said, like 2017 was a hard year for you, and like coming away from that's challenging for you, and like challenging for other people, but without them even knowing it, like at the same time. Like did Calum know that like this is what the business was up against?
Yeah, like how, like, yeah, exactly. Is this fucking normal? Like, well, yeah, it is normal, because like he didn't know any different. So he's getting thrown in at these like sort of like pinnacle moments in time where everything seems so painfully difficult. Like, I can't express like the turmoil that we were in at that point. There's just, the business was like so fragmented that it was, there was conflict. There was the whole carry on with the office manager stealing money from us. I was expecting a baby. I was pregnant at the time. And then it was just chaotic in the sense that the leadership that was meant to be coming from me was constantly daily challenged. And there was no sort of like consistency in that. So the whole place just felt like so hard to get through. But yeah, no, Calum wouldn't have known any different. Of course he wouldn't. We were his first proper job.
Yeah.
And a job where he's being relied upon to be able to perform to a certain standard and learn as he's doing it, and like learn like things that he would never have been exposed to had there been a couple of people older than him in that position, you know. But it was just him and Grant. Yeah.
What were they up against in deliveries? Like what are examples of what they were truly up against, and how was Calum like behaving around that?
Yeah. So like, you know, right now, in terms of our like the level of customer service that happens at Gillies Mackay, to be able to set people up really well for the expectancy of their building. So we've got buyer's prep guides. We have got the email marketing where it informs everybody of everything that they could possibly need to know. We've got the learning center that educates them about which building's best for them. We've got so much content and videos and literature and trained staff to teach people what they have to do in terms of preparation. We ourselves create this wraparound service where we deal with all the base prep, the electricity, the planning, everything that they could possibly need. It's all done now by us, by our project management team. None of that existed. Like none of it. I was only 2 years into creating content and educating the customers, and it was at a very basic level. We didn't have a system in place. We didn't have customer service to that degree. So Calum and Grant were consistently turning up at unforeseen. They were having to do base works on the day of assembling buildings. They were putting up too many buildings in one day. They were coming up against problems that had to be solved on site, and it didn't matter how long that took. They could be on site until after midnight. Many occasions where Calum and Grant are basically left on their own, trying to find a resolve to get the building to the standard that it needs to be in order for the customer to be happy. And like that was constant for I'd say a good 6 months solid, where it was scarily dangerous. Yeah.
And like you can see how that's influenced Calum and the way that he works today and how he influences his team in terms of setting that standard, like being there until that building is finished, being there until that building is done the way that it's supposed to be done, to the standard that it's supposed to be done, and what we expect. And it's there today. It flows through everything within the delivery team, and how Calum leads his team, how he problem solves with his team, how he still problem solves on site today. Like, he is that influence from Grant and what he's faced is a complete influence from how he leads today.
Yeah, it's like accident and emergency, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Like, if you went to A&E and you see what they're up against and the fighting fires that has to happen there, like Grant and Calum were Gillies Mackay's A&E. Like, that's what they were doing on a daily basis. Wild, yeah.
So he's in the delivery team, and he is doing his apprenticeship still.
Yeah, he qualifies in 2021.
Was that the next kind of major step for Calum at that point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, okay. So Calum finishes his apprenticeship.
Yeah.
How does that feel? Like, what did that mean for the business at the time?
Yeah, so this was a big thing, and it was coming around, and everybody was expecting it. But it was a celebration in itself because of COVID and all the carryings on about getting through what we didn't know what the eventuality was going to be, like, for anything. So, like, at that time, like, it was a celebration, not just for Calum, but for the business itself. Like, you know, it was a big deal that he was going to be qualified. And we knew that it was going to have to be a sort of like ultimatum for him, because the typical pattern is that for somebody of Calum's skill set and for the stamina of which he can work, you would expect them to move on to a high paid job somewhere else in the corporate or whatever, right? So you would expect that to be like, I don't know, clerk of works or something to do with the on-site construction. Nothing compared to what we are at G&M as manufacturers. And I knew that for the team, we were all seeing it in terms of the seniors, and they kept telling me, like, oh, well, you're going to make them a decent offer if you want them to stay. And I knew that it was on me to come up with the goods for that. And I wanted it. I really wanted to make him an offer that reflected his worth, you know, like what he was capable of and what he'd already shown, like, in so many ways. I was already relying and counting on him more so than would be deemed reasonable or appropriate for a 21-year-old to be such a key player. So I offered Cal a on-site manager as his role, and this was the sort of a big deal for Gillies Mackay, because we'd started to employ at quite a rapid pace to keep up with the demand that we'd succumbed to. So I really needed to think about the structure of the company, and that I couldn't be that person for everybody all the time. So Calum was my first manager, effectively, in a sort of like official sense.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's legacy seniors in the company that could fit the bill, no problem, no bother at all. But in terms of like actually job offer and role, this was the first time I was actually going to have a manager that I was also going to train and mentor and get into the leadership way that I want to run this business. Because up until that point, there was a mixture of different management styles coming through. But as Dad and Grant and I decide the future of the company and the sharehold changed hands to myself, and Gillies Mackay became second generation, and I was now the lead on that. It was the dawn of my leadership and how I wanted to run the business, and I had to make it my own. And in order to do that, then I had to teach Calum and then Gordon and Chrissy what that looked like for operations. So Calum becomes on-site manager, accepts it happily, I think.
I think he was happy.
I think he must have been happy. Yeah,
he was definitely happy about that.
So that was a big deal. That was a big deal.
I think he probably wanted a role like that. Like, I'm trying to think back to Calum at the time, because I used to speak to him when he came off at the deliveries, because I was in the office until 5. Workshop finished at 3, but the deliveries kind of came in between 4, half 4 at the time, and he'd always pop in and he would say hello. And like he first of all, he held himself like a manager. Like, you could see it in him, like, straight away. I think I've always known Calum to be like that, like the way that he holds himself. And he was someone that you could lean on. Calum was one of the first people that I could like lean on in here that wasn't yourself. In terms of like developing a relationship with someone, especially at a time where it was, for me specifically, quite a scary thing to work in a business where it was very male dominated, and it was yourself and Kath were the only women in the business at the time. And having to speak to these guys and try and get answers from these guys and stuff, but knowing absolutely nothing about joinery at the time. But Calum held himself, had patience. He knew the answers. And he spoke as if he'd been doing it forever. And I started in, when was it, like 2018? So that wasn't even long. He just started at 2017. So he's already holding himself like that at that point. He was holding up I don't know how old I was at the time, like maybe 28 or something. He was holding up a 28-year-old when he was 18. Like, but like he's you could see that he's always had it in him. And like what was his journey like at the beginning, like, of becoming a manager?
So it was like, I think it was funny because I have my own external influences on how I learn and what my ideas are of leadership and how I want my business to be run. And those ideas can be daunting and scary and seem a little bit woo-woo for the team that I have, especially the senior teams that have been managed under Dad and Grant for all this time. Specifically my dad, which he has a completely different management style than me. So you can understand, like, the in 2017 when Calum was joining, like, I'm trying to implement this new way of leadership, and the implementation of that was really difficult. There was a lot of resistance, a lot of hate. And then by the time that Calum qualifies, and it's 4 years later, I have got buy-in. People do believe in me. People do want me to lead. People are happy with what I'm trying to do. They can see the result. They can see the action. They know it's good. So now I'm teaching Calum that he has to now do this too. And I'm not saying that in 2021 it's perfect, because it's fucking not. Like, there's still challenges. There's still a bit of resistance, and there's still back channeling when something's not going the way that they want it. So to say to Calum right now, you've got to be the person that everybody is moaning about. You've got to be the person that's challenging folk. You've got to be the person that's enforcing change. Welcome to my world. Take a seat, sweetheart. We're here for a long ride. Like, let's get stuck in. So, but he just grabbed it with both hands, just exactly as he's taken on every other challenge that's been put against him, every skill that he's learned along the way. He just wants to learn, and he wants to know how, not just how to do it, but what's the best fucking way to do it. Yeah. So when I started teaching him about communication, and I could see, like, it's so funny when we do how we communicate with each other and how we turn up and how we've got to be curious and we've got to be brave in our conversations where we're being as clear as fucking day with our communications. There's no like bullshit. It's like straight to the point. Let's get to it. How are we turning up? How are people behaving, and how do we help them get better? Calum just there's one scenario that I can remember. He had a problem. As a member of staff, hadn't done something that's the Gillies Mackay standard out on delivery, and they should have. Now, it was something very simple. Let's say it is putting plastic on the floor, and the purpose for that is to keep the floor clean. In this scenario, somebody did not do that. Okay, and the floor got filthy, and the customer was not happy, and we went and rectified it. Right. I say to Calum, this is like maybe, 3 months, 4 months into his management training. It's like, right, you need to address this problem. You need to tackle this head on as it's happened in the moment to make sure it doesn't become something that it's not. Rectify, acknowledge what's happened, and get them to agree to what happens next. So he goes in, he takes on that challenge, he sits down and he says, when you do this, it makes me feel like this. And that means that we can't do this. He tells them that what's happened is there's been a disrespect for the processes that Calum has in place to ensure that the Gillies Mackay standard is met out on site. And in order for them to get past this, the person needs to understand how that makes Calum feel and what needs to happen next to make sure it doesn't happen again. And in that moment, Calum is speaking to someone that's maybe 10, 12 years his senior, and he's handling it impeccably. And that person in that position takes on board the feedback, acknowledges where he's went wrong, holds his hands up, and doesn't do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And this, for me, was the perfect example of his leadership in action, because he got over himself enough to be able to put himself in a vulnerable position, and not only to confront in the terms of a kind way to someone, to tell them that they've not done what they should have done, but also to be vulnerable enough to say that this makes me feel like you don't respect me or the standard. To say that to someone at his age is wild.
I think like vulnerable is like exactly it. Like he, I think it might have not been that moment, but I remember it being like him facing that for the first time, and it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard for him to face that, because he's not come across anything like that before, and he has to learn a specific way to communicate. And like, when I've seen it in the past working in different places, when you're that young and you are a manager and you're responsible for people, you have a challenge whereby you shift from these people are my workmates, essentially, and you communicate that way. You have banter and whatever else, and you can kind of let things slide a little bit because you're just pals at the end of the day, and it's not completely your responsibility, right? Type situation. And then to shift over to being a manager, and suddenly you have to like communicate with your team. It's now your team that you are responsible for in such a different way. That is no easy thing to do when you're young. And actually, like, very rarely you get taught that at that age, like, at all. So the situation was rare in terms of his age, and the situation was rare in terms of, like, this never happens. Like, in terms of how you communicate that way. So for him to take something like that on, something big, it's huge. It was huge at the time, and go ahead and do it as hard as it was, like, is a huge achievement for him. Yeah, like, I don't know if he realises it, recognised at the time. I don't know if he recognises it now, but
I think he did. I think he did, because it was the precedent that set it for him from there on. Yeah. As soon as he did that once, that's all he needed. And I know that like the scenario is something enough, and maybe to others, but it was such a big deal because it was him shifting, as you say, from peership into leadership. And that is not an easy thing to do. Like, and ever since then, as as it always happens, like if there's anything that he's struggling with in terms of team dynamics or anything in terms of performance, the first thing I will ask him is, how is he communicating his expectations? Because, and he fucking hates that.
Yeah.
Just want them to do their job the way I want them to do their job. And it's like, yeah. And he knows it's right. And he knows that it comes back to him. And that's the thing about it. That's the thing about all leadership, is that you need to fucking look at yourself first. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this is always going to be a communication issue, not a person issue. So let's get on with it. Actually have the conversation that needs to be had. So, and that's what Calum does. And I've seen him, I've watched him, and I've seen him do it when he doesn't know that I'm watching him do it as well. And even more so if you flip it, like come away from like the sort of like constructive feedback element and go more into the sort of like how to work through things in a positive light. When you see the dynamics between Calum and his on-site lead deliverer Ross nowadays. Now Ross has learned absolutely everything from Calum, just very similar to the way that Calum learned everything from Grant. Ross had to do the same with Calum. Ross has spent a lot of turbulent times of Gillies Mackay's life cycle being the person that's out on site with Calum, dealing with a job that's going wrong and having to support Calum as best as he possibly can, even if he didn't have the skill to back it up. And so Ross has had a similar experiences, and it's not a contest, and it's certainly not something that I would want anybody to have to experience again, but in terms of Calum and Grant's way. But in terms for Ross and his development and where he is now, like the communication between them two is unparalleled. And we've talked about partnerships already, but the way I love how well they communicate is because they can do it over text, over phone, as well as they can do it in person.
Yeah.
And that is a strength. So if Ross is having a challenge out on site and he phones Calum will talk him through. He'll be like, what have you tried? What have you got? What are we trying to get to? Can it be resolved now to the standard that it needs to, or does something else need to happen? And Calum will stay by him that entire time to make sure that Ross gets to where he needs to be. He won't leave him. He'll not chastise him. He'll not put him in a situation that's impossible for him to get out of. He will help as best as he possibly can. And he knows that Ross's success is his success. Mm-hmm. And that's what he recognises as a leader. He is only as good as Ross is. So if Ross is falling off, Calum needs to ask himself what the fuck's going on. Mm-hmm. And Calum knows that. And the way that they work together in terms of like mentor and mentee, like that relationship there is really beautiful. I love it. I love to learn about it. I love to see it because I don't get to see it as much as I get to see the other ones that are in-house. But yeah, so all of that, just like the way in which he communicates as a leader is such a powerful thing. Yeah.
And you can see like with Calum as well is that he doesn't rely on he's leading on his own. It's that whole thing that you said about having trust in someone to be able to just go away and do it. Like you could see the development of that, of like leaning on you a lot for support as he was learning his management and his ways and so forth. And now he's set up for himself. And off he goes, like he's just doing his stuff. Like it's almost like the interaction between you and Calum. You rarely see that these days. It's just Calum just getting on with it, and the communication is between Calum and Ross. Yeah. But what you're starting to see with Ross as well is that he's starting to do the same thing. He's going through the same journey again. So he's the one that's starting to problem solve, and like. Calum is challenging Ross, and Ross is figuring it out. I feel like that has just happened. That shift has happened just this year.
It has, yes. I think it was like since Sorley left, then Ross lost like his wingman type thing. So like lost his support, like comfort blanket, as it were. And then and it was like he was stepping out into his own light now, and it was like Ross's time. And Calum was moving on with CSR, and Ross really was like, now it's time to step up. And the progress in that in Ross this year has been phenomenal. Like Gordon will sing his absolute praises about how he's coping out on site right now, because as we know, it's the hardest fucking job. So
why is it the hardest job? Like for
unseen.
people, yeah, because this is the bit that people don't see is that like the way that I would describe it is like when the guys build the panels and all the bits in the workshop, and then the guys take it out on site and then they put the building together on site, but there's not a blueprint to that. Like sometimes it works out to perfection, sometimes there's things that need to be solved on site, and they do that, and and it takes as long as it takes to do that. So what on the outside, what you might see is like, oh, like that's no working out, there's a problem here. There isn't. It's just the guys are problem solving to get it to where it needs to be. And sometimes that takes longer than the others because they're faced with multiple different external things that can impact, like, you know, the timber, sometimes the way it was built, whatever it may be. And that all comes to fruition, essentially, when it gets on site.
Yeah. So that's it. So when you're in the workshop, that's an entirely controlled environment. So everything there is controlled in the sense that you know exactly what's coming up next. Everything's pre-laid out for you or written down on a tick sheet, and you just follow the pattern. You just keep doing the same thing day in, day out. I'm not saying that things don't throw you off throughout the day. And if that's the case, there's 6 other people there to help you. And there's always someone to jump in. So even like Jamie, our most accident-prone employee, even when Jamie is on one of his many trips away to get a plaster, and somebody needs to cover him, somebody's there to cover him.
Yeah.
If you're out on site, all you've got is the people that you've got out on site, and very rarely is it possible for you to get any form of backup from the workshop that's already at capacity. So the first and foremost priority is that you sort this shit out yourself. And that's really it. And when you're doing that, nobody can see it. Nobody gets to see it. You don't get any extra praise for that. Nobody's seeing the challenge that you're, the frustration that you're up against, the harshness of the environment that you're in. You don't know what sites you're turning up to. You don't know what customers you're turning up to. There's so many elements that come into it that can absolutely ruin a day. And then vice versa. You get hard days, you get good days.
Yeah, I think like you've just reminded me there, like there's another shift in Calum as well in terms of like a big part of your any job is emotional regulation, and like you're talking about the frustrations on site, and Calum was like, and he'll probably agree with me, like he was frustrated as hell with the things that he was coming up on site. But you don't see any of that from him anymore. Like he is like the only thing that you do see from him is the problem solving. Like it isn't that there isn't a problem anymore.
Yeah,
like you didn't see the problem. It's just like getting to the solution of it.
It's always solution based for Cal. And I think obviously there's a lot less frustration because the way in which we build is different now. And the way in which we make these 30-year guaranteed buildings are different now as well. We've changed up a lot of our processes to allow for certainty as much as we possibly can. And so there's that factor, but there's also just the factor of you get nowhere when you're blaming somebody else. Like it doesn't help. Who does that serve? Because the problem still exists. And Calum's always of the mind of, yes, this has happened. Now, where do we go next?
Yeah.
He's a forward thinker and he always has been. And that's what he teaches his team as well. Think forwards, forget where it's come from. Let's figure out where we're going next. And that mentality is what I absolutely need. And if there's one thing for sure and certain, like when it comes to Gillies Mackay and the way that I want it run for the future, is that has to stay. That is something that absolutely has to stay. I do not give a shit who the fuck's fault it is. We can deal with that later. Right now, we all need to get together and solve it.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. Bring me solutions. That's it. And that's what Calum does.
So you mentioned CSR earlier.
Yes.
So what is CSR and what is that for Calum?
Yeah, exactly. Who the fuck's CSR anyway? So CSR is Calum's enterprise. So that is his joinery and landscaping business. I know the name's a bit shit. I really wanted him to go for something else, but then my dad was like, most people just, they put their name to it because it's a sign of like that's their reputation, so they want their name on it because it says I'm not scared to, I'm proud of this work, this is my name on this work, type of thing. And I was like, okay, fair enough. I mean, like, it's just because we're called Gillies Mackay, you know what I mean? So it's like, I was kind of hoping that he would go for something a bit wild, but he didn't. He went for CSR, and that's fine. But how it came about is that he had been spending a lot of time doing base works for a weekend job. And this was like becoming more and more relied upon by us. Like, we were putting that pressure on, like unknowingly, because of Calum's eagerness to do this sort of work. But it gotten to a stage where Calum was working like 7 days a week, weeks on end, that turned into months on end. And it was just like, hang on a fucking minute, what's going on here? And one of the seniors came and spoke to me about it and just said, look, you're going to have to do something about Calum. He can't keep working like this. Like, he's going to end up burning out. Like, it's not okay. And up until that point, I was of the mind that I wasn't sure what his intentions were. I wasn't really aware of the extent of what this was having. But also under the guise that, he was like going for it. He kept coming back for it. So what I'd recognized is I hadn't provided him with a space to talk about it properly. And I didn't realize it was as big as it was. So the first thing I had to do, obviously, was create that safe space for him to have this conversation about what was he doing? Like, what's this all about? So we took the opportunity. I knew he was knackered, and I said, like, let's go and have a chat and see where I can help you with this. So he sits down and I say, like, why are you doing this? Like, you're running yourself ragged. You've got too much on. And he says that he really enjoys baseworks. Like, he enjoys learning something new and getting to grips with another trade that is giving him this sort of instant gratification thing that he looks for when he completes a job. And that's important to him. And when he's telling me about it, I can see it in him. I can see that this is something that's important to him as a person, that he has to be in a learning cycle at all times. And that's a good thing. That is a good thing. And it's something that I would like to help him with and harness it for him. And then the second thing was the commitment to Gillies Mackay. So yes, he was under pressure. He was feeling the pressure from us, and he didn't want to let us down as well. So we had the chat, and I said, right, okay, well, this is great to know, and this is what we need to do. And this is where CSR became a thing. I said, let me invest in your company. Let's set it up properly. Let's get you a proper structure. Let's get you 2 days a week on CSR throughout the week instead of at the weekends. And let's manage this as an actual business instead of just something that you do at the weekends. So we set in and about it. And as soon as we had like made this agreement, like, Calum was off. He was gone. He was like, yes, like, he got everything sorted. He set everything up himself, all the infrastructure, everything to do with what he would need. He got all up and running. I did all like the sort of like legalities, like HMRC and bookkeeping and stuff like that. But everything else, like, Calum was running to it. He was so happy, and it has helped us no end at Gillies Mackay to be able to offer this wraparound service for the market that we changed into, for the much more like bigger complex builds that require proper foundations. Like, these things, it all made sense. And so now we're working with CSR under Gillies Mackay's umbrella, and it's investing in a company that is one of our employees, which just is exactly what we want for the future. When Dad and Grant and I sorted out the sharehold back in 2021, 2022, the agreement was, when we were coming up the terms and conditions for the handover of shares, was that NattyShedLife, the holding company, was going to be a company that would invest in our future generations' ideas, because we had to agree that not everybody would want to make a shed. So maybe they might want to do other things too. And that's what NattyShedLife is for. It's to pay homage to the grassroots of what Gillies Mackay was, and to give the next generations the support and investment that they need to let their entrepreneurial spirit shine and bring something new. So Calum's the first one to do that. And I'm so glad that NattyShedLife is doing what it's meant to be doing in my time. Because there was an idea that I would get Gillies Mackay to like where it needed to be able to go through my succession, and then the next generation would have the NattyShedLife vision to take hold of. But I've managed to do it already. I've had the opportunity to invest in the next generation myself, which makes me feel DOS, because that's what it's all about. It's legacy. It's about keeping it going, you know? So very proud of Calum, very grateful for his continued loyalty to myself, to the company. And I know no matter what happens in the future, I will always know Calum. I know that. We've got a tethering, and I see myself in him, and I know that he sees himself in me too. And it's a special thing to have shared ambition. And when you find somebody that thinks like you, that it's important that you nurture that and you look after it. Because otherwise, leading companies, leading yourself in your own fucking life can be a very lonely place. So it's special. And yeah, very proud of Cal. Well done, Cal.
Beautiful. Calum, what a legend he is.
Wee diamond.
Yeah, I think that's a nice place to wrap up.
I think so. I think that'll do. I'll do for now. I mean, we can do like the alternative podcast at a later date. The alternative.
Oh wait, what is the alternative? We're getting Ross involved. Hold on a minute. What was the alternative podcast that you said earlier?
Oh yeah, what's the name?
Shatty Ned Life.
Shatty Ned Life. Welcome to Shatty Ned Life, where we slag everyone off. Instead of telling you how great they are, we're going to tell you how shit they are.
Alternative universe.
Yeah. Shatty Ned Life.
So that's all for this week, and we'll see you on the next episode. That was a good run.
Yeah. I think you need to probably do an actual wrap up between you.
Will you stop saying that? Why does he say that? Can we not just end it where we end it?
just
Do a fucking proper wrap up.
Aye.
Oh, is that over? Is it? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just waking up at the end of the end credits. Yeah.
Aye.
Oh, so knackered.